Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we are going to continue with our C++ series. So today we are going to go over control flow statements in C++. So control flow statements in C++ or any other programming language in general, what they just give us is the ability to make our programs more dynamic and to be able to act in different ways depending on the user's input or whatever data that it is that we are working with. Okay, still now we haven't our programs only work depending on the user data and can only carry one action depending on the user data. So we're going to introduce more dynamicity into our program using control flow statements. So control flow statements just describe what your program does depending on a certain condition or value that the user inputs. So let's get started. So before we look at control flow statements, we're going to look at Boolean statements. Okay, so Boolean statements, as we discussed earlier when we are looking at the data types in C++. So there's one of the data types is Boolean, right? So the Boolean data type is just a true or a false, an on or an off. Okay, just a 1 or a 0. So we use Boolean statements to make control flow programs in our program to add dynamicity to our program. For example, you want to take in a person's age, right? And you want to print adult if the person is 18 or greater, and you want to print not adult if the person is lesser than 18 years old. So to do this, you're going to use Boolean statements. So let me explain to you just in a second. So whenever I say Boolean statement, basically return a true or a false. Whenever I say 80 is greater than 70, and if I output this, the output will just be basically a true or a false. Okay, so let's try this within our program. So let me just open it, Atom. So we'll just we'll create a basic C++ IO stream because we're going to be using the cout. So just say using name space std and then int main. So we just return 0. Okay, so now that you have done that, we just create a statement here. So we just do cout, let's say 30 is greater than 70, and then end that line. Okay, so whenever I output this, what do you think the result will be? Is 30 greater than 70. So if Boolean returns 1 if it's true and 0 if it's false. So I'll just save my code and then I'll run the code again. I'll compile and run the code. So this will actually be false, right? So we go back 0. So I'll just make this bigger. So I hope you can see here the output is 0 because obviously 30 is less than 70. So Boolean statements return either 1 or a 0. The reason we are going to use this very shortly within our control flow statement, so keep that in mind. So let's run again there, turn this around, and then we see what the output will be. So I'll compile and run my code, and then I'll bring that over here. So I'll just increase the size. So you can see over there we have 1 because obviously 30 is less than 70 or 70 is greater than 30. So Boolean returns 1 when it's true and 0 when it's false. And you're going to use this within our control flow structure to control what happens depending on if a condition is either 1 or a 0 or a true or a false. So just keep that in mind. So this is known as a Boolean statement. So let's go ahead. So now that you have looked at Boolean statements, let's look at if and else statements, which are one of the fundamentals in creating a dynamic program or control flow in our programs, to control the flow of our programs rather. So for example, if and else statements is that, let's start with the if statement. So if statement takes in a Boolean condition, Boolean statement, such as the one we looked at earlier, this over here, it takes in a Boolean statement. And then if the Boolean statement is true, the block under the if code will be executed. If it's false, then the block under the if code won't be executed. Okay, so let's begin with the if statement. For example, we're taking an input, right? So we're taking the user's input, maybe the age of the user. So we are checking if the age of the user is greater than 18 rather. If it's true, then the code under the if block will be executed. If it's false, then the code under the if block won't be executed. Okay, we'll look at else statement just in a second, but for now just ignore this part and just know that if it is true, the code under the if block will be executed, otherwise the code under the if block won't be executed. So let's get into Sublime Atom, and then I'll show you this just in a second. So I'll just remove this. We aren't going to be using this. So to create an if statement, this is the if, and then parentheses. We put in here a Boolean statement. So for example, if 30 is less than 70, and then we put in curly braces. So this, whatever code we put in here, code under the if block. So whatever code we put under the if block will be executed if this condition or Boolean statements returns a true, means a 1. Okay. So for example, we just want to check if if 30 is less than 70, we want to print yes. Okay. And then I'll just want to end that line. So I'll save this, and then I'll compile and run my code. So I'll bring that terminal over here, and then I'll make it larger so that you guys can see. So you can see I got a yes. So what happened is that, let me just keep this aside for now. The program moves here and then it checks if 30 is less than 70. This is true. So the code under this, between these blocks, right, between these curly braces, will be executed. If this condition is true, the code that we put between these two curly braces will be executed. And in this case, it is true. So we are going to execute this code, which just simply prints yes. That's why we got yes on our screen whenever I ran that code. So let's change this around and then let's see what happens. So we say if 30 is greater than 70, that is false. So this block, this code here under this, between these curly braces won't be executed. Just to show you this, we just do a C out here saying, we just say no, no, and then we just do comma, outside, we just say outside the if block to show that the code under the if block wasn't executed. So we just end the line. Okay, save this and then we'll run the code. Compile and run. So I'll just bring my terminal over here, and then I'll make this, I'll make this larger so that you guys can see. So you can see here we got no outside of the if block. Okay, because this statement evaluated to false, because obviously 30 isn't greater than 70, so it's false. So the code between this block isn't executed, so the program skipped over it and then came down here and executed this. That's why we got no outside of the if block, because we didn't go inside of the if block. We went outside of the if block because the conditional statements or the Boolean statement didn't evaluate to true. So that's what if statement does. So now let's move out to, let's imagine that let's start working with the age of the victims, right? So we're taking age, I'll store it in a variable right now. So if age is greater than, let me just make this more descriptive, call it age. So I'll create a variable age, and then I'll assign 18 to it. So if age is greater than 18, right? If age is greater than 18, we'll simply print adults. Okay. What if is not greater than 18, and then you want to do something else before coming to this block? So that's where else statements come in. So let's move on to else statements. So we're taking the age of the victim, of the user. My bad, victim, not it's just user. So we're taking the input of the user, and then we check if it's greater than 18. If it's true, then the code under the if block will be executed. If it's false, then we'll check another else condition. So else, if it's true, execute this, else execute this, and then at the end of the day, we'll go outside of the both if and else block and continue running our program as usual. So let me just show you this in code. So for example, I'll just remove this for now. Just leave it there. So I'll just remove the no part and then just leave it outside of the if block. So else, to create an else statement, we just say else and then parentheses. So just do a C out and then say child. Okay, it's just child, something simple, and line. So save this. So whenever our program runs, it reaches this point, it checks if age is greater than 18. If it's true, then the code under this block will be executed, which will simply output adult. Else, it will execute this. So if this is not true, if this doesn't evaluate to true, then this will be executed, and after this is executed, our program will run as usual and move down and execute all the other lines following it. Okay, so let's make this more descriptive, right? A person is an adult if his age is greater or equals to 18, right? So if the age is greater or equals to 18, we'll execute this block which will just print adult, else we'll execute this block, and then we'll continue running our program as usual, going to the other lines after that. So I'll just compile and run this. I'll bring my terminal over here and try to make this larger. So you can see we got adult, and then we went back to outside of the if block statements. So because age is equal to 18, so this statement evaluated to true because we said if age is greater or equals to 18, print adult, else print child. So the age is equals to 18, so we got adult. After that, we didn't go into this block because this evaluated to true. So we only go to inside of this else block when this evaluates to false, when this condition evaluates to false. So let's imagine that age was 10, right? So I'll just close this and then compile and run again. So I'll bring the terminal here. So I'll make this huge, yeah. So we can see we have here the child. We got the output as child because 10 is less and not equals to 18. Also 10 is not less or equals to 18, so this block doesn't get executed. So if this block doesn't get executed, then the else block will get executed. But if this block gets executed, then the else block won't be executed. But every code outside of the if and else block will get executed as usual. So that's all about if and else statements in C++. Okay, so let's create a simple what my assignment to you will be is that create a simple program, right, that will take in a number of the victim, of the user. I don't know why I keep on saying victim. We take a number of the user, and then we check if the number is even, we'll print even, else we'll print false, we'll print not even. So if you haven't looked at operators in my previous tutorials on operators, just go back and look at those operators. So what we did, we went over modulus operator. Okay, so we're just going to do that in here. So say age, let's do a cout, tell me a number. So this is a number, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do a cin and store that number in number. I'll just copy this and change this to number, and also here. So we'll prompt the user for input. So if he inputs the data, so we want to check if it's even. So to do that, we'll just an even number is a number that divides by 2 and returns no remainder. Okay, so the remainder is basically just 0. So if a number modulus 2, so the modulus operator just returns to us the remainder. So we're taking the user's number, the input, we divide it by 2. If the remainder is equals to 0, that number is obviously even. So just output saying even, else we'll just do odd, and then we'll say end of program. Okay, so that's all our program does. So we ask the user for an input, the user gives us a number, we check if the number divided by 2, the remainder is 0. If it's 0, then the number is even, we'll print even, else we'll print odd. Okay, so if this is true, then this block will be executed and this block won't be executed. But if this is false, then this block won't be executed, but this else block will be executed. So that they cannot execute both at the same time. So they alternate depending on the condition of the Boolean statement. So I'll just run this code, and then I'll bring my terminal over here and make it huge. Okay, so I'll type in just 4. So we got back even, and then we got back end of the program, right? Because the number 4 is even. So I'll just run this code one more time, and then this time I'll input an odd number. Okay, so make this huge, and then I'll input an odd number, maybe 5. So we got odd, and then we still got end of program. Okay, so this block we just used to perform a certain condition depending on certain is used to make our program behave differently, aka dynamic, depending on the certain condition that you are checking for within an if statement. Okay, after these blocks are executed, one of these blocks is executed, then our program will continue executing these other blocks, lines below it as usual, as it would. So that's the end of if and else statements in C++. You can just create a program that takes in the age of a person, and then if the age is greater or equals to 18, you can print can vote, else cannot vote. Okay, because in most countries you need to be 18 and above in order to vote. So create a program that will take in the age of the user and then tells the user if he or she is eligible to vote. So that's the end of this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, we're going to look at else statements, just another form of control flow statements in C++. So see you there. Please don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.